Hello and welcome back to the Pulse with Willie and Al. How you doing today, Al?
Willie, living the dream, man. How are you?
I'm doing good, my man. It's getting a little bit late here, but we are definitely doing well today. Dude, it's our 19th episode we're dropping today.
Man, I can't believe we're one away from 20, man. One away from 20. Woo.
Absolutely. And the 20th one's going to be a special one for the folks. So, bear that in mind. But
Mm,
this one here, this one's for the Zebras. After
yeah.
college football, pro football this past weekend, this one's definitely for them. So, but hey, let's get started. Let's jump right into the Sunday takeaways that we've got from week 7. Colts getting screwed. Any thoughts on that, Al?
Apparently, I don't understand. I still don't understand what pass interference is. I don't know when you call it and when you don't.
Hmm.
Apparently, you can throw a ball that's 14 feet high that nobody's going to catch, and yeah, that's apparently you can still get flagged for pass interference. So cool. I thought I knew the rule on that, but I once again, as this show has proved time and time again, I know nothing,
Yeah,
and that's
and
okay.
just to clarify too, was that in the stands? I think it was
It
in the
you
stands,
had
right?
to you had to be a minimum of 11'5" to catch that
Oh,
pass.
that new.
That's the only way that's catchable.
Do you think that new
Like,
basketball player Wembenyama? Do you think he could? Do you think he could catch that?
oh,
Cause
Wemby's arms are long enough for sure.
yeah,
I
definitely.
watched him. I watched him in preseason last week. He was at the foul line and blocked somebody shooting a 3 pointer.
Yeah, it's that's
Yeah,
scary. So,
yeah,
but yeah, really tough to see my Colts get screwed on that. And listen, it's um, I just it kind of rings back in my mind. Like I remember my dad used to say things because like when we were wrestling, like sometimes the ref makes a bad call, right? Like these are people. No
yeah.
one wants to be a referee. It doesn't seem like it's the most hated job in terms of people, fans picking on people that do it, all of that stuff. They get hazed nonstop and harassed. But I remember like sometimes when the ref would make a bad call and a kid would come off the mat, they'd be like, "Ah, coach, I got screwed by the ref," and he's like, "Yeah, the ref made that call in the first period. You had 2.5 periods to fix that."
Yeah,
However, in this case, this is done at the very end. And that's one
yeah,
that I kind of feel bad for. We saw now, this is not just 1 week, but 2 weeks going back to the Giants game, where it seemed like the Giants got kind of screwed by that. And it just, you don't want to see that. And again, as a football fan, you want to understand what's a penalty and what's not. Same thing with the Philadelphia game against Miami. I was
yeah.
very confused as I was watching through that, like what's a penalty, what's not. Now, listen, I like Philly. I think they're awesome. They're great to watch, but a lot of those were penalties.
Well, you think about last year's Super Bowl. That was decided on a penalty.
Yeah.
For all intensive purposes, that was decided on a very questionable pass interference call
Hmm.
that they hadn't been calling all game. So I hate that like these big games are getting taken out of the players' hands. Like, sure, you could say like, hey, like it shouldn't have gotten to this point, sure, but still, like, it's just it makes it hard to watch sometimes. Where you're like, are you kidding me? Because like you and I have watched football pretty much all our lives. Like you and I always think we know what pass interference is, but like year after year, it turns out we don't know what it is.
It's changed a little bit, and we're
Yeah,
it's a very fluid definition. So,
yeah, for
um,
sure.
well, speaking of a team that penalties wouldn't have even saved them, let's talk about the demolishing of the Lions by the Ravens this week. Like that, to me, I was a bit surprised because I know when we had talked about it, I definitely picked Detroit to win that game, and I don't know, it was very rough to watch.
I we're gonna talk about this when we talk about the Dolphins too. I don't trust the Lions. Like I will not trust them to win another big game because this was a huge game for them that they absolutely needed, and they, excuse my language, they just shit the bed in every way imaginable. They
Yeah.
looked like the old Lions, and like that, and I wasn't, you know what I mean? Like after watching that, you're like, okay, cool. These are still the same Lions we know and love and remember. Okay,
See, for me, and I'm actually going to take a different stance on it. I'm not concerned for the Lions at all. I
okay,
really think there's a real path to them not being the best team in the NFC, but definitely being in contention to have the number one seed. And I just think they needed this. Like other teams too. We've already seen it happen to the Chiefs. We've seen it happen to the Eagles, the Bills, Miami. All of these teams need it, right? Like you need to have that get punched in the mouth and get back up again. And the reason I'm not as concerned about the Lions is because eventually they're going to have David Montgomery back. They run the ball extremely well. Their offensive line is very, very good. And they play good defense as well. They don't let teams run on them. And that's a recipe for success in the playoffs. Now, Jared Goff, I know some people don't believe in him, but I'm a Jared Goff believer, and I think he's going to help this team rebound. It's obvious right now they miss Montgomery, but I think he's going to find a way to right the ship. And Jamison Williams is starting to come in and come into his own. And even though it was kind of garbage time, Amon Ra, you're able to see what he's able to do week in and week out. I think even with them getting killed, he finished with like 12 receptions.
Yeah, and the thing with the Lions too is like they don't really play another good team for most of the rest of the way. It's like they play the Chargers in a couple of weeks after the bye, and then like
But that will be,
Dallas and Minnesota.
but
Like
see,
that's it. And Minnesota's I don't know what they are, even after they beat the 49ers
I don't
last
think
night.
anyone does, right? But
Yeah.
like the good news about when they play the Chargers is those will probably be the Brandon Staley less Chargers. So
I'm not sure at this point.
yeah, yeah.
They'll probably give him a 4-year extension. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what the Chargers at this point. They confuse me.
Well, someone that doesn't confuse you, or at least a team that doesn't, let's talk about Baltimore real quick. Lamar, he
Yeah.
obviously looked really good. I mean, he put up some really solid stats, not only just in the first half, but it looks like he's getting a really good grip, at least the last couple weeks on this Todd Monken offense. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that was a complete game from Baltimore, start to finish. Like they they showed up. Lamar played, I think, reasonably well. And like this is what I was kind of hoping to see from them. Like if they're gonna do make any noise this year. Like, they're good defensively. It's just offensively week to week, they're never consistent.
Hmm.
And this was what I was kind of hoping I would see from Baltimore to show me, like, oh, maybe they have this kind of figured out, even though they got decimated with injuries on on offense. Like, I'm here for them, man. Like I am. Like they play in a division though that is going to eat itself alive, and if they can somehow survive that, like I don't know, man. I don't know.
Well, I mean, two things I want to mention is Mark Andrews is an absolute man. If I could be an NFL player, I'd want to be Mark Andrews, and
Yeah,
he's just big. He's physical. He can catch the ball really well, and anytime that they go to him, it's awesome to watch him play. It really is. The second piece, and it seems like their offense is kind of clicking around him, Zay Flowers, even OBJ caught a few balls this past weekend. Rashad
yeah,
Bateman did too. I was like holding my breath each time I saw it because I was like, oh, did they get hurt? No, okay, they're getting up okay. But this team has been rumored to possibly be going after Saquon Barkley. And I'll tell you, if you add a guy like Saquon Barkley to this team, I think
yeah,
it definitely puts them right near the top. I again, you had made this statement before that like until a team beats Houston, until you beat the champs, right? In baseball, you can't consider yourself the champ, right? Or
yep,
you're not going to be considered the best. Well, I think if Baltimore gets Saquon and they go in and they're able to beat a team like Kansas City, I really think like that. Then you could consider them like, how, all right, these guys have a shot to be able to do this.
yeah,
But the defense has looked really good too. And like, this is a very tough unit. I look at it like this past game, 5 sacks, 8 quarterback hits, which was very solid. Teams are averaging 13.9 points per game against them, which is very, very low. Not quite as low as the early, the early Ravens, right, from the 2000s, but like as
yeah,
I look at this, they've only had one game where they gave up more than 20 points this season. That's that's really really solid. So
yeah,
they do have a good defense, and that's with the injuries that they had. I think Clowney provides a nice complement to them. Roquan Smith's a stud. I again, I'm scratching my head every time I see him on the field because it's obvious of where he is, right? Number 0. You can always see him, but
yeah.
I'm scratching my head why Chicago ever let him go.
Yeah, Chicago. they're a mystery. I mean, they let Khalil Mack go, so like, who's to say with them? Like, yeah, with Baltimore though, like it's I kind of want to go back to Lamar for a second because like
Yeah.
this was like the most complete Lamar game we've watched in a while with him. Like the stat, like I know like what the stats say. Like he only ran for 36 yards on 9 carries, and he's been averaging about like 10 carries a game. But like honestly, it was his arm that beat the Lions. Like threw for over 350 yards, 3 TDs, no picks. Like if he's gonna keep doing that, like that's the Lamar you kind of want to see because people are so concerned with his legs that like they're gonna sell out to stop that. They will, defenses will. But if he can beat you with his arm, like that's the dangerous Lamar because then you have to like be as a defense, you have to play honest if he's gonna beat you with his arm, and then that's when he can beat you with his legs. Like
I mean,
that's the Lamar I kind of want to see. Like
I'm
this is it's like very much 2019 MVP Lamar.
Yeah, I mean, haven't they been floating this narrative though for a few years of like, oh yeah, like he's not gonna run as much, he's gonna throw more, and like now we're actually seeing it, and he's taking off when he needs to when the play breaks down, and I think that's what makes it so difficult to defend a guy like this, is because he still has the ability to when it does break down, the play does break down, to go and scramble out and get that first down and possibly more. He's not
Yeah.
doing it as much as he was before, but now he's adding that extra facet where he can throw the ball well, or at least it looks like it. And it wasn't easy dump passes he was throwing. I mean, he's floating it over the linebacker underneath the safety, you know,
Yeah.
in stride. Like that's really good to see from him. That's stuff that we haven't seen before. Um, Let me ask you, Al, because I was curious about this as I was on my way home today. Who do you see as the biggest threat to the Ravens?
Again, the analogy I've been using in baseball for these playoffs, like until you beat the champs, like you gotta. It's Kansas City. They've weirdly been consistent.
Hmm.
They like, and they somehow are getting better. Shout out Taylor Swift. But
Yep.
like, but for real though, like they're kind of rounding into form, like they have been the last couple of years, and they like Mahomes is just again on another level. He's playing another. He's having another MVP season, and until I don't care who it is in the AFC, like the road still runs through Kansas City if you want to get to the Super Bowl. And until somebody beats them, again, it's Kansas City. It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, and I have to agree too, right? I think it's definitely Kansas City. Cincinnati also is a team that I think just because they play each other so much, I I think they know each other very well. And Baltimore got the best of Cincinnati when they were kind of banged up and hampered earlier in the season. I don't know if that's going to happen the second time around, but let me throw something at you real quick here, because
Yeah.
this is my main concern in terms of the Ravens, and it's kind of two parts. The first is Lamar staying healthy, and it's not something
Yeah.
that he's proven he's been able to do in the past. They have had, like, obviously last year was brutal, but it always seems like he does get banged up. And I realize the MVP season, it was kind of an anomaly with that, but that's the first piece. And the second piece of this is like, look at the remaining games that they have. I'm gonna throw these out at you right now. At Arizona, home at Seattle, home at Cleveland, home at Cleveland, home to Cleveland, home to Cincinnati, at Chargers, home to Rams, at Jacksonville, at San Francisco, Miami, Pittsburgh, both at home. Like, I don't know about you, but the last thing I want to do is go through those teams in the last month, let alone like look, the not last 9 games they're playing are against decent teams. Like,
Yeah. And say what you want about Arizona, but Arizona at least usually plays teams tough.
yeah, so that's
Like,
that's 10 games where okay,
yeah.
they're going to be favored in at least half of those. But my thing is like, tell me a game of one of those teams that can't put up points. Seattle,
Yeah.
Gino and they could pop off at any point in time, right? Like Ken Walker, they run the ball well with him. Cleveland, their defense is ridiculous. Cincinnati, they got Burrow and Chase. Chargers, they've got Herbert and Keenan Allen, and if Eckler and all of them tried to actually gel together and make something happen. The Rams, Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and Nakua, right? Jacksonville, they've been playing better recently. San Francisco, they're going to be pissed off and in postseason form at that point. Miami, they're going to be looking for a playoff spot at that point. Pittsburgh, right? Like, who wants to play in the cold against Pittsburgh, dude? No
Yeah.
one. No one. So, like, I just look at this and I could easily see them uh, losing 7 out of 10 games. And I don't want to say that's going to happen, but I think it will bring people back down to reality on the Ravens. And I just, that's why as we're talking about this game, I see the path for Detroit winning a lot of the games they're going to play towards the end of the year, whereas I don't see that necessarily with Baltimore. Now, I could be wrong. This team could get
Yeah.
better and just could keep improving, and they could go out and show out against these teams, and it won't be a big deal. But for me, I'm very concerned about Baltimore going forward.
Well, we keep talking about with the NFC North. I think the NFC North is just NFC North. I'm sorry, the AFC North. The AFC North is just going to cannibalize itself.
Yeah.
If you've got four teams like that are all pretty evenly matched, even though records kind of say otherwise, like they're just going to keep beating up on each other. And I think we talked about this before we started recording. I think like 9-8, like or 10-7 could probably win that division.
Yeah.
Like
It's
it's
definitely
just going to be a
possible.
dogfight.
Hmm. Yeah. It's scary to see there. I mean, I just look at that like I don't know. But let's chat about the Dolphins real quick because I know you had mentioned them previously. You were saying, listen, I don't trust this team. I mean, the offense, we've talked about them on multiple episodes. They can stack up against anybody offensively, right? They've got the
Sure.
firepower to do it. Achan's going to be back at some point. Mostert, Achan, Jeff Wilson, like they're great out of the backfield and stuff. Or, well, I don't know about Wilson yet, but we'll see how he kind of, how his production ramps up in the next couple weeks. But obviously, with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, like they've got enough firepower to go with anybody in the league. I think the concern is defense, and I know they've got Ramsey coming back, but what are the main points that you're concerned about with this team?
Well, it's funny because like in this game, like I kn- this game was kind of a weird game. Miami at one point was down 17-3 right before halftime. They come back, they tie it up, and then like they just kind of go cold in the fourth quarter. Like Miami is such a weird offense. They score points in bunches, but sometimes they're just like not. I know it sounds weird, but like they're not consistent for a team that leads the league in offense. Like they just have these like cold stretches where you're like, what? I know you can't. It's not possible to score in every single possession, but like they have the talent to at least always put some kind of points on the board. And it's just wild to me. Like in Philly, granted they have a good defense, but I think their defense has taken a step back from last year.
Yeah.
And I really thought Miami was just gonna it was gonna be a track meet, and it wasn't. Like
Miami didn't run the ball well at all against them.
no,
I mean, they're used to putting
no,
up what is it, 187 a game, something like that, and they
yeah,
ended with like sub 50 yards. Like that's just
yeah. Mostert had 45 yards. Like
yeah,
they just
that's
and like
rough.
Tyreek Hill, like he had 11 catches, but he had it for 88 yards total.
Well, and that's the
Which
thing. Like if I told you Tyreek Hill had 11 catches and you'd start to have a heart attack, and then I said for 88 yards and 1 touchdown, you'd be like, all right, we're winning that game. Like
yeah, and honestly, one of it like was on the 27-yard touchdown reception that he had. So like it really was like 11 catches for like almost like 50-60 yards. Like
they swallowed him up.
that's insane. Or
Yeah,
10 for 60 essentially. Like
yeah,
that's insane. Like
yeah. They swallowed him up quite a bit, and I don't know. Like the rest of the way, this is the thing. They've got exceptional coaching on that team. They're getting pieces back. Teron Armstead, we're hoping he'll be back in a couple weeks. Jalen Ramsey, when he does step in there, he's going to provide an extra dynamic to that team, a solid guy on the outside that they can depend on. Uh, and
yeah.
and that's part of the reason I think this defense has not been as good as advertised is he's a huge component to take out. when that's a piece that
Yeah.
that's the last Jenga piece that the whole tower is going to fall when you pull out a guy like him, just because he provides that playmaking ability. He forces turnovers. He covers very well. He's not perfect. He's not the best. He's a couple years past his, past where he was doing that every single play. But I would still take Jalen Ramsey over probably the majority of the league, right?
Yeah. And I think too with Miami, what the next 2 weeks I think is going to tell me a lot about this team. They play New England on Sunday, and like that should be a winnable game for them. No, New England really played them tough. Their first matchup was that weird Sunday night game,
Hmm.
um, and then they have Kansas City, and now they have both these games at home. No, I'm sorry, Kansas City they play in Germany. I apologize, but like after that, like, and then they have the bye. Like in the next 2 weeks, I think we're gonna really know what if this Miami team's for real or they're just kind of the team that like beats the shit out of like terrible teams, and then when they actually face anybody decent, they can't get it done.
Well, this is one thing that's a little interesting about that too, is do they really need to? Like you're seeing the Bills faltering now, the Jets like okay, there's the Rodgers rumors of him possibly coming back, but like the Pats, they're not making
Yeah.
the playoffs. So like does Miami really need to run the table in order to make the playoffs? I don't think so. You know?
Wait, the Patriots aren't going to make the playoffs?
Oh
I
yeah.
can't. I can't. I we can't even tank properly, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's
I really think they need to. New England, respectfully, is a team they should kick the shit out of. They
mhm,
should. Like, there's no Judon, there's no Christian Gonzalez. They should beat this team
mhm.
handily. In Kansas City, like if you want the old adage, like, hey, like if you want to start making a statement and be a team that people take seriously, you're gonna have to beat Kansas City.
Yeah. I mean, that's there's only I'm still, like I said, I know we just talked about the Ravens. I'm still not sold on them. The one team that I think that has it because of how much I trust the quarterback is the Bengals. If Joe
Yep.
Burrow and the Bengals get to that game again, I see an epic game with Kansas City again in the AFC Championship game. I just don't know if that's the game we get. I don't know if we get an incredible back and forth chess match type game if the Dolphins are there, right?
Yeah.
The Bills maybe, but I don't know. Josh Allen's turning into a turnover machine again.
Yeah.
Lost another fumble, threw another pick on Sunday. Like it just, you know.
With Burrow too, I we talked about Miami. We're gonna know what kind of team they are in 2 weeks. You're gonna. It's the same thing with Cincinnati. The
Mhm.
next two games are 49ers and the Bills.
Listen, we're
I
on to
think you're gonna.
Cincinnati.
Yeah. 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 Like you're gonna find out what kind of team they are as well.
Hmm.
So like,
I was gonna say,
yeah.
what do you think about the NFC? Because I mean, we were talking about the Eagles there, but and I know, listen, there's a path obviously for Detroit to get the number one seed, but what happened with the 49ers can't go undiscussed, right? Like we have to talk about that.
Let's talk about the 49ers for a minute because that like I'll be honest with you, I didn't watch that game because I was watching baseball last night.
Hmm.
So I kept like checking the score on my phone and I was like, okay, sure the Vikings are winning, but like the 49ers will figure this out. Like surely they will. And then I just kept checking the score and I was like, oh, they can't they're not moving the ball. Okay. And this is like the second bad Brock Purdy game in a row that I'm like,
And he
oh,
had McCaffrey.
yep. Now Debo's legitimately hurt right now.
Yeah.
You're not high on Debo though. Like we've had this talk.
Listen,
You
I
are
just he just I don't know. He's all flash, and I know he's an X factor in the game, but I don't even think he's the best receiver on the team. So
yeah.
for me, like I have a hard time being like, oh yeah, I'm really behind that guy. I see him with a lot of talk and not a lot of production.
Yeah, they first of all, turnovers did them in. They had 3 turnovers last night. Like Purdy threw 2 picks, McCaffrey lost a fumble. The 49ers only ran for 65 yards. Like you can't
Yeah.
that team, that identity with that team is Christian McCaffrey running the ball.
Yeah, and
and they
breaking
couldn't do
yeah,
that.
and breaking at least one loose for 20, 25 yards, and that loosens things up so that Purdy can drop back and throw the ball, and sets up
Yeah,
their play action. It sets their whole offense up, them being able to run effectively.
yep, yeah. Respectfully, Kirk Cousins played like the game of his life last night. Like no sacks, only had the one pick. I think he really has something with Jordan Addison. Like, man, I don't know. I
Addison's
don't know.
special, and this is what
Yeah,
I hope for. And I know you don't want to hear this because I know you're not a Cousins fan, but I really want to see them add more pieces to that team and re-sign Cousins for next year because I think Cousins coming back. This is my fear: is if they bring in a rookie, great, right? Let him sit on the bench and play behind Cousins and stuff because Cousins has the rapport with Jefferson. He's building that rapport with Addison. Hawkinson is there. Like this team could be good. They really could
yeah,
be. I
yeah.
think they need to get a lot better on defense. They could spend some money and do that in the offseason, but I think they're finding as you look around the league this year, there's a lot of teams that would beg for a guy like Cousins on their team. And
Yeah, I
I
would
mean,
gladly take Kirk Cousins
yeah.
on the Patriots at this point.
Yeah,
I'd gladly take that.
dude, look at I can tell you someone that would definitely take Kirk Cousins on their team is Devonte Adams, man. Like it's I feel so bad for him too. Like I feel like he's in prison.
Uh, I don't feel as bad because I remember, maybe I'm misremembering this, but I thought he kind of like asked his way to Vegas. Like I
So
thought he requested that trade.
he did get his way out of Green Bay. And listen, I think a lot of that stemmed, in my opinion, from the uncertainty regarding the Rodgers situation and him kind of taking his time on his ayahuasca thing, like all of
Yeah,
that stuff. Like he was just like, all right, I'm done with this. I'm going to go get my money and get paid. So, yeah, he did kind of force his way out of Green Bay. Uh, but I just, I think they need to force McDipshit Daniels out of out of Las Vegas. Like that's my new name for him. Like I
I
just
would gladly take him back as offensive coordinator for the Patriots. He's the best offensive coordinator we ever had.
yeah, but
Like,
it's I feel like he's just not a good head coach. And
no, he's
that's
not.
not a terrible thing, right? That's really not a
No,
bad thing. Bill O'Brien isn't a great head coach. I wouldn't even say he's a
no,
good head coach, but he's a better offensive coordinator. There's some people that are just better in their roles than moving
yeah.
up and running the whole ship. And that's okay. There's nothing
Well,
wrong with that.
that was always the knock with like Wade Phillips. Wade Phillips, great defensive coordinator,
Yeah.
just not a good head
Yeah,
coach.
you saw what
Like
he
that
did
just
in
wasn't.
Denver. Dude,
Yeah,
that defense was ridiculous there. The
yeah,
no-fly zone. I mean,
yeah,
they were awesome. Oh,
yeah.
man. Well,
But I think to go back to your question, I think it's the Eagles. Like they have the experience. Jalen Hurts with the knee thing worries me a little bit. It sounds like he's not going to practice this week, but not going to miss any game time.
yeah.
But something to keep your eye on. But like honestly, they're the best coached team. They still have the most talent. That
They added
offensive
Byard
line,
too. I mean,
yeah, yeah. The trades that they're making, like they're Philly's all in this season.
yeah.
Like it is win a Super Bowl or bust for them.
Hmm.
So
And I think one of the things that I really like about Jalen Hurts is I feel like he's very grounded. Every single time I hear him speak, I feel like I learn something and mature more as
yeah,
a person. I know that's crazy, but he
yeah.
just seems so sure of himself, yet so understanding of where he's at, where the team's at, all of that stuff. And I see him as very humble. And
Yeah, he was on the New Heights podcast earlier in the offseason, and it was one of the better episodes I had watched of that show. Like
mhm,
the dude just gets it.
yeah,
Like the dude just gets it, and like he got paid a fuck ton of money,
yeah,
and
he
like
did.
he's still the same guy.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's tough too. His
Yeah,
teammates talk about that, like how good of a teammate he is and what a great leader he is. But you hear them coming out saying like, "Oh, that guy's tough as nails." Like he
yeah,
really is. Um, but one last team I wanted to talk about. I know you had brought this up before. Pittsburgh. Uh, s- so kind of
it's
interesting
bad
because
for them.
Listen, I picked them to win that division this year, but they're not winning it the way I wanted them to. I thought they were going to be really good. I thought Najee Harris was going to have a great year. I thought Jalen Warren was going to have less of a year than he did last year. Like I just thought they were going to be doing many different things than the way they're winning this year. And it's kind of like ugly wins that they're getting, but they're still winning. So let's talk about that. Let's
They
unpack that.
here's a Steelers game in a nutshell. First three quarters, they run screen passes for Najee Harris for -6 yards a pop. Okay, it's like 3rd and 16. I feel like every other possession for them for the first three quarters,
Hmm.
and then the fourth quarter, they're like, "Hey, let's just try something else offensively," and it weirdly works. And I don't. There is no rhyme or reason. Like if you look at the talent on this team, this is not a team that should be four. What are they, 4-2 right now?
Yeah.
Like this team shouldn't be 4-2.
Yeah.
I I give up with them. I had Cleveland winning this division, and that doesn't look like a great pick right now.
Well,
I also had the Jets going to the Super Bowl. So
yeah, I mean that was kind of
moral of the story:
unfair, right? Uh-huh.
don't ever listen to me. Don't.
Well, it was kind
Like,
of unfair with Rodgers going down. Like that was a legit Super Bowl pick. But
yeah.
one name for you, Matt Canada. I mean, it's one thing to be hated by your fans, but dude, they were chanting his name at the Penguins games. The NHL games, they were
Yeah.
chanting "Fire Matt Canada." Like, I mean, the hate that people have for this guy, it's I don't know. Like, I wonder if he gets
It's
up in the morning and just embraces it. Like, if he Bryce Harper's it and is like, you know what? Like, I could just take the hate. But I mean, it's kind of bad the way they're playing. Like, and you look at other teams in the league that have had 400-yard games. I still think Pittsburgh has not had a 400-yard game in like 3 seasons.
yeah. With my theory is this: like, if the biggest story on your team is how bad your offensive coordinator is, that's not good. I shouldn't readily know Pittsburgh's offensive coordinator off the top of my head. And
In
I
a negative
do,
way. Yeah.
yeah, and I do because he just gets dunked on every single week.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, they are 4-2, so I don't. It's almost like they're playing in spite of him.
And
Like
we
it's
don't know
incredible.
what we're doing, right? Like
It's
it's just,
incredible.
yeah.
Kenny Pickett game to game, you're like, I don't know.
Yep.
He could be good. He could not be. There's no rhyme or reason to anything on this team.
Yeah.
All I know is that Mike Tomlin's a good coach, and he will probably somehow get them to 9-8 and avoid another losing season.
Yeah, because he's
Yeah,
smart enough to do that. He's off to a good start for sure. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, hey,
It,
let's unpack this Thursday night football game. We got Tampa Bay at Buffalo. Not one I really
God,
want to
this is going
talk
to be
about.
so
Yeah,
terrible.
but Buffalo, at least last time I checked, they were getting 8.5. The over/under's 42. Do you see Buffalo being able to rebound from that loss against New England? Because that was brutal to watch.
You would think so, but Buffalo at this point, like, this might be the year where there's just like too many injuries are going to catch up. Like defensively, they are a shell of themselves right now.
Hmm.
Like they just can't. They can't get any stops defensively. Like they have so many guys hurt that like even when Von Miller comes back, like I don't think that's enough of an answer.
Well, so this is the thing. Them missing Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones, it's just too much. Like they're
Yep.
such key components. Matt Milano getting hurt and being out, Tre'Davious White, like it's too much. And like I
Yeah.
honestly think, and you tell me I'm wrong, but we've been victims of recency bias with Buffalo.
Sure.
And they've done well in the past. We've come to expect it. We just assume like okay, like they're going to be great again. They're going to be relevant, and it's not even. I hate to use that word relevant, but what I mean is relevant in the postseason picture, right? But there's only so many injuries you can make up for, and I think it's taking its toll on them now.
Yeah, I agree. And if Josh Allen can't be consistent like this, I you know the AFC the way it is this year, like I assume that Buffalo will make the playoffs. They'll figure it out. Like Josh Allen is good for 10 wins a year, like just by himself, and that's fine.
Sure
But
is.
like the comes playoff time, like I don't they've got the stink on them at this point that I'm like, I'm not going to pick them in the playoffs. Like that just, it's just a sucker's bet. Like, but I think that they should be able to beat Tampa.
Yeah,
But like, you could tell me as well that Tampa wins this game like, I don't know, 27-21, and I'd be like, okay, sure. Like I don't know. Buffalo loses weird games, and like,
yeah, like I expected them to smash Jacksonville, and that didn't happen.
yeah,
I don't know, man. Like you're right, they do win weird games. Like teams that we expect them to beat, they don't. Yet like other teams they'll like blow out, and you're like, man, this team's really good. One thing that
yeah,
does look good, and of course in fantasy, it's been of course 1 week too late. I was promising people at the beginning of October they would regret not drafting Dalton Kincaid in fantasy. But now you're starting to see the emergence of him. I think you're going to see even more with Dawson Knox going down with surgery, right? So
yeah,
he 8 receptions on 8 targets. Like that's what this guy was meant to do, right? That's what they brought him in for, was to be able to do that. He's not your big blocking tight end on the inside that runs, that helps in run support. He's a slot receiver. So I really think he could be pivotal if this team's going to start to turn it around. Stephon Diggs keeps doing Stephon Diggs things. Like even that touchdown he had against New England, it was incredible. Like
yeah.
he is awesome to watch, man. And I legitimately feel bad for him. You see the way I don't think Josh Allen is that bad. I just think, and think about how crazy this is. I don't know how many times he threw the ball that game, but I know it was a lot. Out of all those times, he made one error, right? One interception,
Yeah.
and we're judging him off of that. Most people off the street would have thrown every pick and maybe completed one pass, right? Like we're
Right.
judging him off of that, but that's the standard, right? That's what we base it off of. That's what we grade all the NFL quarterbacks off of is turnovers. So,
Yeah.
if you turn the ball over a lot, listen, you're not helping your team win. Desmond Ritter's a perfect example. Like I
Well,
hate to bring it up, like, but dude,
I was just gonna say that's the opposite. Like Desmond Ritter lost 3 fumbles, and they somehow Atlanta somehow won.
yeah, it blows my mind, right? Like it just for me, I don't, I like that's not sustainable, right?
No,
I guess that's what I'm trying to say
no.
is like it's not sustainable to play that way and expect to win football games. They Josh Allen needs to turn it around in order for this team to have a chance the rest of the year. He really does. He's got to be more protective with the football, and I don't know. Like I don't know if that's what we're going to get out of him or not going forward. I don't expect it to change that much. I really don't. I could still you could tell me like he could start winning games where he's throwing 3 touchdowns and throwing 2 picks and it doesn't matter because they win. Right? Like it just
Yeah,
I don't know. Tampa Bay though, I feel a little different with, right? Like, it was a pretty tough loss to Atlanta this past week, especially when like we had talked about it before, like their defense needed to force turnovers against Desmond Ritter. It was going to keep them in the game, and it
yeah,
did. But there
yeah.
was some
Their
yeah.
defense did everything that was asked of them, and it wasn't enough because offensively, they just they were a pile of dog shit. Like,
I mean, I've got to bring it up because we're chatting about that game, but like did you see the Drake London, like was it a touchdown? Was it not? Like completely
yeah,
vertical, let's land on my neck and like that insane play. Just an insane play. It makes me plays like that make me question whether I know football or not.
yeah, yeah.
It's
I'm always confused by the physics of stuff like that. You're
yeah.
how did you catch that? Because you shouldn't have, and yet you had the concentration and come down with 2 feet in bounds, and like I kudos to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I what do you have for a score for this game?
Oh man, I'm gonna regret this. I have Buffalo winning 24-14.
Close. I was gonna say I have Buffalo winning this as well. And I should pick Tampa. I should just to be contrarian, but I too am gonna regret this. I think it's gonna be 21-17 Buffalo.
Oh
Yeah,
man, isn't that funny how that goes? So
yeah,
yeah, it just listen, I don't think it's going to be a necessarily great game. The Thursday games, like I mean, they've been better this year, I feel like, than last year, but still on short
Yeah.
rest, like I don't have big expectations for it. But
No.
anyhow, let's talk about something we do have big expectations for, stuff that's kind of exciting because I definitely want to be able to kind of open this up now in terms of the ALCS and the NLCS. We have
Woo!
an American League champion, right? Texas
Yeah.
Rangers win the pennant and in dramatic fashion too. They
Yeah.
couldn't have just won like 2-1 or something like that. They had to be dramatic about it. They jump out at the beginning, what, to a 2-0 lead, right?
Yep. Yeah. They take both games in Houston.
Yep.
Yep.
And then
And then they
Houston
go home for
turns
the next three.
around, right?
Yep. Yeah. So they play the next three in Arlington, and Houston wins all three of those, and including the game five back-breaking home run by Altuve in the ninth.
Yeah,
That three-run job, like, man, that was tough.
yeah, I thought it
So
was
they
going to be
go.
a reverse sweep at that point. Like I really like after
Me
that I
too.
was like, okay, well, the balloon is popped. It's over.
Yeah.
Like this game this is done. Like
Well, Texas's bullpen got exposed for
yeah.
what they were, and and the only way you can kind of outdo that is if you just put up like 11 runs a game, and then that's what Texas did. They're like, you know what? We're gonna score a bunch of runs, and it's not gonna matter, and that's exactly what they did. Adolis Garcia, he had 15 RBI in this series alone,
Yeah.
and most of them came in the last two games, and they just kept pitching to him. And I don't understand. And he had the big grand slam in game six. That was a 2-run game, and then that busted it wide open for Texas. So the bullpen didn't really have to like worry about it.
Yeah.
And then in game seven, two more home runs. Like that's and to think that this guy was put on waivers by Texas in 2021, and
Yeah.
he went unclaimed on waivers.
Yeah,
So
I
every
saw it
team in the
on.
league had a chance to pick him up, and they did.
Well,
And now he's 2 years later, he's an all-star, and
who was he with
he.
before? Because I
So
saw a tweet the other day that someone like had pinned the tweet on him saying that like, oh yeah, this team's trading him to Texas for cash consideration.
okay, so in 2019,
Yep.
and I believe it was in spring training, the Cardinals had him and Randy Arozarena on their team, but put both of them on waivers.
uh,
Uh, and then this gets funnier. At one point in their farm system, they had Zach Gallen and Sandy Alcantara, but traded both of them.
oh man.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
man. We could have been
yeah.
looking
St.
at
Louis just fucking wild.
those just aren't St. Louis things to do either because I feel like St. Louis has always been pretty smart about that. Am I wrong? Like I feel like ever since I started watching baseball when I was young, St. Louis was always relevant or competitive or every year they were going to be a tough team to try to beat. And
Right.
they didn't make moves like that. They'd bring guys up and they'd be excellent players, but man, really screwed the pooch on that one.
Yeah. No, it's wild. But yeah, Texas, man, like so couple fun stats. Like this series, no home team won in a 7-game series. Only other time that's happened was 2019 World Series, which the Nationals beat Houston in 7 games. Um, and then also one of the pitchers on that team was Max Scherzer, who now plays for Texas.
Yeah.
So baseball is just a funny, funny sport.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely happy for the Rangers, for them to be able to do it in the way that they did. Because I mean, it's all about momentum, right? And it seemed like they had all of it, all the juice at the beginning. They lost their
Yeah,
mojo a little bit at home, and when you get beat 3 games in a row, it almost feels like, okay, this is over, right?
yeah,
Like it's going to be done. And for them to be able to come back and win those 2 games, especially in the way that they did, oh man, like they're
yeah,
they're more than deserving of, like you said, you can't call yourselves the champs until you beat the champs. And
yeah,
they're not champs yet, but they're going to have a shot to be able to have a say in that.
yeah. And they're gonna have home field in the World Series.
Yeah.
So kudos to them. Um, Yeah, and also a big shout out to Bruce Bochy, their manager. It's the third different team he's led to a pennant, which that's incredible.
Yeah.
That is absolutely incredible. Like
Yeah.
this dude's been managing for this is his fourth decade managing, and like he's got three World Series titles with the Giants 2010, 2012, 2014, and he has been that steady hand that has guided him in the playoffs. And he uh fun fact about him, he is undefeated in game sevens as a manager.
Wow.
That's and Dusty Baker, ironically, hasn't won a game seven as a manager. And that trend continued last night. Like,
Man. That's really tough to
yep,
see because I like this isn't a bad Houston team. They're really not. They came on strong at the end of the year. They ended up they ended up winning the division, right? Because
on the last day of the
yeah,
season,
the
yeah.
last
And
day
then
of the
that meant
season.
Texas had to like go straight from I think they played Arizona that final weekend series in
Hmm.
Arizona or something like that. They were on the West Coast and then they had to fly immediately to Tampa. They had to fly across the country, play two games there, and then immediately fly to Baltimore. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, man, it's they haven't lost yet on the road, and that's impressive.
Yeah,
So
they've definitely had a good streak going and stuff. Going to be excellent to be able to dive into their team, breaking them
yeah,
down, which we will do in our next episode, which is going to be nice. But let's chat about this other series because it's. I mean, we're getting our money's worth, right?
yeah,
When you're watching these games, like that's exactly what you wanted. Obviously, I'm a little bummed because my Braves aren't there, but listen, to get two game sevens in the ALCS, NLCS, like you're getting exactly what Major League Baseball wants you to get.
yep, yeah. And it's fun stat about this. This is the Phillies have been around for a very long time. This is the first Game Seven they've ever played in postseason history. Fun
Wow.
fact. Yeah, yeah. And I honestly, Game Sevens are weird, man. Like anything can happen. Anything can happen in Game Sevens. Like uh, I don't know who wins this game. I really don't because like Philly had it all set up to just close things out at home with Aaron Nola on the hill,
Hmm.
and dude got rocked. Dude got rocked, and it's man, I don't. Yeah, I just don't know, man. I don't know. Like these playoffs have been so weird. I've been wrong every step of the way, and now Arizona is going to start a rookie in Game Seven, and whose name I'm not even going to pretend that I know how to pronounce his last name.
Yep.
Um, and it looks like it's going to be Ranger Suarez for the Phillies.
Yeah, I mean,
So
who's had a pretty good postseason so far,
yeah,
So, man, like I don't know. Talk about momentum swings. I feel like Arizona isn't popping them with a big needle, but it's just like that slow leak in your front
yeah,
left wheel that just is like you could feel it like coming out of Philly, right? Because like the way Philly had left that Brave series riding real high, and then the way they started this series, it felt like okay, they've got this under control. They're going to play really well through this. And Arizona sneakily has stayed around and I hate to even say that, right? Like the series is tied. It's a best of one series now. But it's really good to see Arizona have not only have played them tough, but have a legitimate chance to be able to go to the dance.
yeah. No, they Arizona is just like they have defied everything that I know about baseball. Like this team had no business. They won 84 games, and like it's weird because they give me like this weird 2006 Cardinals vibe. That team, I believe, won 83 games that year and won the World Series. So like was it 2006? Yeah, they beat the Tigers that year,
Yeah, I
going
was
into
gonna
one
say,
the World
wasn't that the
Series.
year they? Sorry, Dad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, but yeah, they just give me that weird vibe, like team that just statistically you're like you look at it and you're like, they shouldn't have even made the playoffs.
Hmm.
And here we are, they're one win away from the World Series. So
Yeah, I mean, you've seen it in sports before, though. Like even, and I'm sorry to bring this up, but even the year the G-men ended up winning the Super Bowl, they got in as wild card team. Like right, like
yeah,
all you need is a chance, and sometimes that all it takes with some of these teams is you give them a chance, give them a little bit of daylight, and they run with it. Like
yeah.
I'm excited for them. I can't wait to see like who ends up winning this game. I know I'm going to be waking up like 4 or 5 times during the night to look at my phone. But that's that's what happens when you live in Turkey and you're trying to watch American sports, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, like man, I love chatting baseball with you and stuff too. It's going to be awesome to see tonight who ends up winning that game. We will be back. Let's see, we're going to be dropping another episode Friday. So we'll be giving a full World Series preview, which is going to be epic. We'll talk about
Yep.
one of the football games, but the main thing is we're going to chat about the World Series, and we'll have both teams by then. So we'll know
Sure.
exactly. We'll talk matchups, talk through a bunch of stuff. So I'm very
We'll talk a little
excited for
World
that.
Series history, which I'm going to be really excited about, and
Yeah, yeah.
get real nerdy on. And yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Listen, we're gonna peel the scout back and dig out some knowledge from there. We want to find out exactly what we've got in there. So, but listen, man, another awesome episode. I appreciate it. Always fun, man. It really is.
Yeah, man.
Uh,
No, this was a good one, and yeah, Willie, stay safe. I love you, and peace.
yeah, I love you too, man. Don't forget, guys,
Oh
subscribe,
yes,
like the video. Definitely make sure you do that. Keep the comments rolling in. We appreciate it. We're definitely working on a few things behind the scenes to make sure we bring you better coverage going forward and a better product. But again, keep the comments rolling in. We love it. And thank you so much. Al, love you too, bud.
all right, peace.
Peace.